Hi, I just want to preface this video by saying if you can hear like a really weird groaning, moaning noise, there is not a body trapped in my cupboard. The windows are creaking because it is really windy outside. There is a storm today, so I hope you can't. The Magnus Archives, a universe where humanity's deepest, darkest fears are manifested into their reality. This is another video talking about those fear entities. This is part 2. This is not in any sort of chronological order, so you don't need to have seen part 1 to see part 2. You can go watch part 1 after, or you can just watch part 2 and be done with it. I don't care, but you're here now, so buckle up, buddo. The flesh. This is the fear of one's body being mutilated or changed in some way. It all originated with animals and their fear of being bred for meat. This then developed in humans when we realised that we too are nothing but bone and flesh and meat. This fear, I can hear the weird noise. This fear has links to cannibalism and body image. Think body horror. I do love a bit of body horror. Think body dysmorphia. It's all about being reduced to nothing but meat. There's a very well-loved French film called Raw about a veterinary student who develops this increasing craving for meat. It starts out as like raw animal meat and then develops into human flesh. I think this is a good film to encompass the flesh vibe. Very worth a watch. Also films like American Mary or The Reanimator, or of course my favourite novel of all time, Frankenstein. The Spiral. My fit today was a little bit Spiral inspired, but I recently downsized my wardrobe, so I don't have as many clothes as I used to. This is actually my partner's jumper, so. But yeah, everyone always dresses up the Spiral as quite like a funky entity because the Spiral is like the fear of madness. It's deception, it's lies, it's not knowing if you can trust your own reality. Nothing makes sense. A mental institution where the doctor gaslights you into thinking that there's absolutely nothing wrong with you and that it's all in your head. An island north of Russia that does not exist, and yet you're there. A door that leads nowhere, and yet leaves you completely unfamiliar with your surroundings. An avatar of this entity is my dear, dear wife, Helen the Distortion Richardson. She was a real estate agent that succumbed to such impossible doors and eventually merged with the Spiral to become an entity of that fear and an agent of deception. Being afraid that your reality is false in some way is a horrible thought. It's like one of the first times you see the pictures. You are in a coma right now. This is us trying to find a way of getting through to you. Wake up and you're like, what the fuck? Messes with your head. You're probably well aware of the Uzumaki manga by Junji Ito, which uses the literal symbol of a spiral to torment a town and symbolise their descent into madness. It warps their reality and drives them insane, and is very good if you haven't come across it before, but the noise. It's very popular, so you've probably been there. Also, The Shining very much embodies the Spiral. The main character is losing his mind. It very much embodies the idea of losing yourself and being unable to distinguish from reality. The Corruption. The crawling rot, filth, flesh hive. The Corruption is the fear of disease, contamination, things that evoke a feeling of repulsion and disgust. This entity presents itself a lot in the Magnus Archives as bugs, creepy crawlies, but it can also have a metaphorical representation in the form of unhealthy relationships, the idea of collective consciousness, and the loss of one's sense of self. As someone who's got a relatively manageable contamination OCD, this fear entity definitely messes with me a lot. Mold and dirt and rot. If you've ever looked at Magnus Archives cosplays on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and come across a Jane Prentice cosplayer, oh, the people look horrendous, but in like a good way. Like, it's horrible to see. And I applaud the people that do that. Couldn't be me. I can't look at them for too long, but I love the creativity, guys. Good job. Horrible, just horrible. It's that utter repulsion, that creeping, crawling feeling under your skin, and I hate it. There's a film called The Bay, which is like a mockumentary found footage film about a toxin that gets into a town's water supply. And this causes like a parasite to mutate. So when obviously people are drinking this water or using this water, they're ingesting this parasite and it basically eats the town from the inside out. Very corruption core. Also thinking of like zombie films where the trigger is some sort of contaminant rather than like the reanimated dead. So some sort of like infection or something like that. The Dark. I think we both know what this is the fear of. I don't think much has to be said. The Dark is one of the oldest fear entities for obvious reasons. Like, who knows what's lurking in the dark, especially like way back before light. It's the complete unknown, isn't it? You don't know what's out there. If you can't see it, how can you comprehend its existence? Obviously, the nighttime is like prime feeding ground for the dark. I don't really have much else to say. It's very self-explanatory. It's an obvious trope in horror films. A lot of them are just set at nighttime or in the dark, if not like predominantly set at nighttime in the dark. Paranormal Activity, The Blair Witch Project, I could go on and on and on. I don't have much to say about the dark. I'm really sorry if you're like a dark enthusiast. It's not my favourite entity, I must say. The Hunt. The fear of being prey. This is a very animalistic, primal fear entity, and it doesn't really transfer to humans as much as most of the others do. However, it does still affect some people in the Magnus Archives. The Magnus Archives universe. And the way it does that is manifesting in like the love of hunting or tracking. Avatars of the hunt have been seen tracking down other avatars from different fears and destroying them. It's kind of like a compulsion for them to hunt. Again, I've not got that much to say about this one. I'm really sorry. It is quite a big deal in the Magnus Archives because one of the main cast is sort of overcome with the hunt. Alice Daisy Tonner is a cop and a bastard. 2 films I've got for the hunt though are both recent watches that I really enjoyed. Ready or Not, which is about a newlywed bride that unwittingly enters into this game with her new family where she is being hunted down to be killed. Very enjoyable. Loved that film. Also Creep. Tentative with this one. Not quite as feral as like the vibes of the hunt would usually give off, but the way the main antagonist tracks down and stalks his prey gives me Hunt vibes. He's like dead set on catching the main character. Yeah. Creep was a good film too. The end. Death. Death, why did I say that? It's death. So the fear of your life coming to an end. It's inevitable, but it's a very passive entity because it doesn't really have to do anything in order to enact its power. It doesn't need to find victims, it just needs to wait. You'll find this entity in like obvious images of death, like bones, skeletons, graveyards, ghosts, and even dreams. A fun little thing about the end is that all the other fear entities have a ritual that they are like working towards, and this ritual will help them manifest more so in our reality and shape the world into a domain that reflects that fear entity. So, like the Dark, for example, wanted to extinguish the sun. In contrast, the End doesn't seem to have a ritual. It simply does not need one. The End will outlast all the other entities, and when there is nothing left, it will also die. Have you seen Puss in Boots 3? Hear me out. This is my choice for the film for this one. Not a horror film. However, very The End. I actually wrote in my notes Puss in Boots 3 lol. If you haven't seen it, it's great. Puss is literally being followed by Death after realising that he's used up 8 of his 9 lives. Death looms over Puss at every corner, sort of striking this unease and like imminent terror in the poor little kitty cat. Yeah, that is my pick. It was literally like the first film I thought of when I thought of Death, but I'm sure there's many others. The Desolation. The lightless flame. This is the fear of destruction, of pain, of loss, and burning. Followers of this entity, known in the Magnus archives as the Cult of the Lightless Flame, revel in taking everything from someone who feels they have it all. They diminish any potential a person might have. This fear is the literal and metaphorical decimation of everything. I'm thinking Carrie, but nothing else is really coming to mind. So clearly I put all my favourite fear entities in the first section because I've not got a lot to say about some of these. I've got one left. I am in fact including the Extinction. The Extinction. This is a relatively new fear entity in the Magnus Archives universe. So a lot of the other ones, like, they developed from early days, like really primal, instinctual fears that human beings might have or animals might have. This is a fear entity that isn't quite as realised as the others, and this is the fear of a catastrophic change, of the destruction of nature for humanity. Whether this be through acts of nature or through technological advances, but more often than not, through humanity's own doing. Most of the other fear entities do not want the extinction to exist. They do not want it to happen, as this would obviously destroy all chance they have of coming into actualization, of completing their ritual of shaping the world. In modern day, this is very much a scary reality that we could eventually cause our demise, our destruction, the extinction. Yep. Media very much reflects this fear because the amount of films about the apocalypse or the world coming to an end is mountainous. 2012, War of the Worlds, Book of Eli, Deep Impact, This Is the End, 28 Days Later, I Am Legend, Day After Tomorrow, the list goes on and on and on. This is a new-ish fear. Also, the Bible. The Bible talks about the end of days, doesn't it? So that's something, I suppose. I don't know where I'm going with that. Anyway, that's all the fear entities. Yay! Thank you for watching. Do go watch the first part if you've not. If you've watched everything now, cheers for that. Do all the YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe. There is a weird humming noise coming from the attic. Kind of sounds like a song. I feel like I'm going to check that out. So, love ya. Bye.